right, we're here with a special episode of Lake Effect Sports. We've got guest Jacob Burns. He is the host of OBR Film Breakdown. Jake, how we doing?
I'm great, guys. Thank you for having me.
Before we get into 2021 season talk, I kind of just want to talk about your Browns fandom. You can see it in the background of the video. You're a huge Browns guy. Have you been like a lifelong Cleveland guy in overall sports, or what's the case?
Yeah. I grew up suffering the same way all of us have. Right. I grew up north of Columbus in a town called Marion. And Central Ohio gets a little weird because it gets pulled three different directions. I live in Columbus now. You'll find some Cleveland, a good amount of Cleveland. I think it's a majority of Cleveland fans, but you'll also find some Bengals, a little bit of Bengals fans and some Pittsburgh fans mixed in too. But yeah, for the most part, I grew up in a pretty heavy Browns environment, a couple Steelers fans. But yeah, I mean, I grew up really enjoying the Browns, even in the worst of times, and stuck it out. And, there's always like my nephews are young. They're just entering high school. One of them's a Brown, they're twins, and one's a Browns fan. One's like, I'm just going to be an Eagles fan. And I'm like, man, I don't blame you. That's fine. That's
That's like one of those things you can't even be mad at. It was like 20 years of just pretty terrible football. So
yeah, I talk about the lost generation often. That's guys like me in the early 30s, late 20s who maybe don't remember the late 80s, early 90s. I was born in 89. I don't obviously remember the late 80s teams, and I was too young to remember the Belichick teams. So all I've known is 20 years of genuinely terrible football. So I don't blame anybody for not wanting to continue to go down that path, be in that environment, make that a part of your make that a part of your life, because it's not fun. It hasn't been that fun. Now the payoff seems to be right in front of us, but yeah, there's a generation of Browns fans who I think they lost. I think they lost a lot of people, but hopefully they can start trickling back in because they have a good thing going.
yeah, I
Yeah,
know.
for sure.
I can relate. I'm a Youngstown guy, so if you haven't heard before, Youngstown gets all of Pittsburgh. I mean, it's just brutal how bad it is with fans here.
I went to college in Southeast Ohio at Muskingum, and it was I was pretty stunned at how many Pittsburgh fans there were over that way. But again, it's factions of Ohio that we're going to go wherever they most enjoy football from a perspective of winning, and Steelers have done quite a bit of that.
Yeah. Well, you did
for sure.
out, and you started this OBR. When did it kind of really start to kick off for you and really get a bit of a following going?
I started doing it. I noticed nobody was really talking about game film. Like 2017, I think, was when I started doing it. So there was, I kind of started to follow along and pay attention to the media because I've been busy my entire life. I'd been preoccupied with other things, and I was looking for an avenue to continue to discuss or be involved in football somehow. And as I followed along, and when you grow up, all the obvious names of folks covering the team, but as I'm following this thing, I'm like, I don't really see anybody providing analysis. And this was like 2017. I didn't really know. Maybe it was just I wasn't looking around enough. I'm not sure, but I didn't notice really anybody doing it across the league. Like there were some people that have been out there doing it a while, but like, the Matt Waldmans of the world and things like that. But I just didn't notice that many people doing it. And I'm like, well, I'm at this job where I'm lucky enough to have a lot of downtime. I'm at a desk all day and I don't have to talk to customers all the time, and I get my work done. And I was like, I'm going to download this screen capture software, which was like, it was like Ice Cream Screen Record. It's the goofiest name. And I'm like, I'm just going to talk about the game. I'm just going to go through key plays and I used to call them Monday film recaps, where I would just go through and pinpoint plays and maybe 20 clips on a Monday. And people loved it. Like they really, really loved it. And I'd actually, when I had first started the idea of writing, I was writing on the Indians. Obviously, it was a good time to be writing about the Indians because of where they were in 2016, 2017. And then I went to this place called Waiting for Next Year, which I'm sure you've heard of if you've paid enough attention to Cleveland sports. And they were like, well, our Indians coverage is good, which they had fantastic Indians writers. But what do you think about writing on the Browns? I was like, okay, I'll do that. That's fine. So that's when it all kind of picked up. And I from the beginning of that season to the end, gained a lot of followers. I could tell people were like really interested in this niche, and kind of took it from there. And WFNY was great to me. The people there were really great. And then the OBR caught on to it. And I spent some time at cleveland.com and did some other things. It's been a very growing area across football, is people explaining it, and the all 22 element of it, explaining, because football is the least understood sport. It's the least understood of the major three, because there are so many details tied into every single play. Basketball, there's hidden things in basketball, but for the most part, it plays out right in front of you. There's only 10 guys, and it's just there. You can see the whole floor, you can see all the players. The NFL, you're watching the TV view, you can only see so much. You don't get to see the downfield action as well as you should. Obviously, they're at a side angle, so you don't see all of the things going on with the offensive line. So it just caught on. I mean, I went from like 350 followers when I decided to take up this idea to like 7,000 by the end of one season. And I was like, there's something clearly here. So it's been a long journey of just, there's people that do it now, people on the Brown side that noticed it and caught on. And I mean, imitation's what is that, strongest form of flattery or whatever. But yeah, there are other people in the Browns market who do this stuff now. So it's but it's a popular niche, man. And there's a lot of people that really enjoy it.
All right. Well, thank you for that. So I kind of just want to dive into the 2021 season now. I mean, that's what you're here. Everyone's here to listen to you talk about this great Browns team. Just a quick little question before we get into like real in-depth things. Super Bowl odds for the Browns, plus 1,600 right now. Would you throw a little money on that?
I'm not a gambling man, but I could see people doing it. That's not bad. It's again convincing yourself that they can stay healthy enough, and they can. If they can, they have the talent to do it. There's only so many teams on paper. People talk about, well, they're only an on paper team and whatever. And it's like, well, you have to be an on paper team before you're an on the field team. The talent has to be there to translate, and they're finally there, right? So I definitely think that they could do it. We'll see if they actually, can make it happen. But I don't know. People who gamble, maybe they know a little bit better about that's a good odd or a bad odd. But I think that they have a real chance to get there and get it done if they get in that, because it's playoffs are a coin flip, man. They're just a coin flip. So Pat Mahomes gets hurt at halftime, or someone's out with COVID or anything. So yeah, I mean, if you want to put $50 down on it and see what that turns into, you and go ahead. They're in the conversation. Put it that way.
Oh yeah, for sure. And like I would probably put a decent amount too. I mean, and you're right, playoffs are always random. Like you said, we had an opportunity to maybe catch the Chiefs off guard because of Chase Daniel being in the game, but it didn't work out that way. But I think
even worse, it was Chad Henne.
Oh, Chad Henne.
You want to feel like a decade. I posted just yesterday about the App State game, which feels like a lifetime ago. And that guy was the quarterback for Michigan in that game. So yeah, man, it's even worse. But sorry to interrupt, but that's just it's even worse than Chase Daniel. I had his
name on the brain just because that was like the anniversary. But yeah, like playoffs are always random. So hopefully, like Browns are always are on the right side of that luck, because playoffs is a crapshoot and it's a lot of luck.
All right. So speaking on the biggest issue for this Browns team is the defense is a huge question mark still. A lot more improved than last year, but I think the most important piece is JOK. Where do you see JOK being used, and how much trust are we giving him this year?
He's going to be the will backer. I think they're going to trust him as much as they have to. The Jacob Phillips situation sort of forced that scenario. But yeah, I mean, they're going to keep him at will and play him and start him there, and he'll be in dime packages. He'll be on the field nickel. I expect him to be a pretty big part of what they do this year. And that's maybe more than we were all hoping for initially, but they like him a lot, and he's one of their best 11. So when when a guy's one of your best 11, you gotta get him out on the field. So I would expect him to play, staying healthy, 80% of their total defensive snaps, because they'll use Joe Woods as a nickel guy by nature. He'll use a ton of he'll use a ton of linebackers, because he doesn't, people talk about dime all the time and this dime concept for him and all the fun they can have with these DBs, to which I agree. But at the same time, he's got to have everybody he wants. And he's notably said, hey, I'm a guy who prefers to play nickel. So I think we'll see more of that than anything else to start the year. And I think that will involve JOK in there as the second backer.
And you were talking about dime and corners. we obviously made some big moves, acquiring new pieces. How much trust do you have in those new corner additions? Do you like the secondary a lot more this year?
Well, yeah, of course. I mean, there was the glaring weakness last year. John Johnson is a massive upgrade both on the field and in a locker room setting. I don't think there's any questioning that. You get a second year of Ronnie Harrison. You can get Grant Delpit healthy. That's an immense improvement to your secondary at the top of it. Troy Hill, obviously a guy who's played outside corner in his career, finally moved to inside corner last year when the Rams let go of Nickel Roby-Coleman and found a ton of success doing that. And I think he can play a little bit of both. I don't think people understand that, yeah, he was brought in to play slot, but he will be able to play outside too when they need him. And then, Greg Newsome's a guy they're cross training in both areas. He's played slot corner from the start of OTAs. They've given him opportunities there. They flirted with it into training camp, and in each of the games in preseason, he has also played in there too. So they have flexibility with him. I still think he's your best outside corner behind Denzel. So I think he should start there. We'll see what they do. But yeah, then you have Greedy too. And if they're all healthy, which seems like they might be come week one, it's just a talent upgrade supreme here. I mean, you didn't have Greedy. You're playing Terence Mitchell, nice NFL player, solid, nice depth guy, playing him every single snap last year. Like, he was the leading snap count guy on the entire defense. You had to play a real mixture of unfortunate players inside. Kevin Johnson, who, he battled from the beginning of the year with his kidney he had a liver laceration, maybe. I can't remember. It was pretty serious, but he came back relatively soon. I like Kevin. He's talented, but not as sticky as you would like as a slot player. And he just did not tackle well, which was the concern going into the year. Bared out as true throughout the year. So you can upgrade that. And they were playing Robert Jackson in there and a whole bunch of different people. Tavarius Thomas. They're playing a whole bunch of people.
It was just a mess. It was just a mess at the very end of the year.
Yeah, absolute mess at the end of the year. And they're piecing it together as they went. And then that's not even including the safety room conversation, which is, Andrew Sendejo, because Sheldrick Redwine never quite figured out how he needed to play to take that role from Sendejo. He didn't have the cognitive understanding of the defense the way they wanted him to. So that left a glaring athleticism hole at the safety position. So, Sendejo has played and Carl Joseph's in and out. It was bad, guys. So yeah, I think we've talked about it, but I maybe don't think it's stressed enough how big the personnel improvements have been for this group.
Yeah, I agree.
You miss Andrew Sendejo?
Do I miss him? I mean, Andrew was, he was never brought here to play the way he was forced to play. So he got a lot of blame for things that were not always his fault. And, I'm not a hate on a player. There are people out there that do that, and it's funny, and I totally understand. I mean, he was in the wrong place at the wrong time quite often. But for Andrew, he was not brought here to be a guy who played as much as he did, but he was forced to. And, it led to a ton of issues for them. So that's the only thing last year when I go back and look at it was the lack of safety depth that they needed for a guy like Sendejo to not have to find the field. And they probably were hoping that Sheldrick Redwine could figure it out, right, and get on the field too. That's a 4th round pick in his 3rd year or his 2nd year. I can't remember. Anyway, yeah, you needed him to figure it out and get on the field in some capacity, but he couldn't. So they were strung there. I mean, I think Sendejo's a smart guy. He could be like a pinch player, a guy who could come in and fill a specific role for a game plan. But, leaving him out there like he was left out there is a no win for everybody involved.
Yeah, and I think you touched on it a little bit with the defense, that the new guys are more versatile than the old guys pretty much, and they can fill multiple roles. I think one example is John Johnson, who with the Rams, he played in the box, he played free. He almost played like a linebacker because I think their linebacker depth was so bad. So he had to play multiple roles. And I think that's kind of the theme of all these guys that were brought in is we need guys that can play multiple roles. And if you can do that, you're going to find a spot on this team pretty much.
Yeah, correct? I would say too, it's the same, at least the goal of what they're trying to do with the upfront guys, find people who can play outside, who can play inside. Malik Jackson can play that big slot, that big end position. There's no doubt about that. Clowney can move inside. Sheldon Day, flash versatility in the last preseason game. Malik McDowell can play a shader 1. And the same way with linebacker, they were trying a bunch of linebackers in different positions throughout preseason too. They definitely want as much versatility as they can get across every position. And the safeties are obviously no different. They want those guys to be able to handle playing up at the line of scrimmage, in the box, in the slot, deep half, deep middle. They want them to be able to do it all. And I think they have a group that can do a little bit of everything.
All right. So the defense has a lot more versatility. The offense seems a little more settled in stone. And there's one guy in particular I want to talk about, Baker Mayfield. So what do you want to see from Baker this year? Like improvements, like pocket presence, checking protection, like lower body. Like what do you want to see the most? What step forward do you want to see him take?
I think with Baker, it's just consistency, right? Like consistent accuracy. I don't think that there's a ton. I put a clip up the other day. He could do himself some favors with using his backs out of the backfield more often, taking throws that are given to him by the defense. I think defenses at this level are baiting him into some throws, and he'll make them, and he'll end up making them and burning teams. But he is I'm going to throw the football down the field as often as I can. He is, when you talk about a gunslinger, that phrase gets thrown around a lot, but Baker really loves to drive the football downfield, like whenever he can. And that can be a thing that works out for you. And then sometimes it can be a real detriment, right? Because, hey, there's an open player in the flat. If I just swing it out to him, but God, I want to throw this 20-yard skinny that is just, it's a tight window, but if I make it, it's going to be beautiful. There's some of that to his game. As you get older, I talk about this all the time on my pod when I talk about the evolution of Baker and where it all goes for him and how he becomes the best version of himself. He doesn't have an elite trait in terms of running ability that makes defenses change how they play. Teams play Josh Allen a little different. They play Lamar a little different because they can move, Kyler different because they can move. But he doesn't have that. And what he has to ultimately get to is, and I've said this for years now, is that he has to have a head coach or play caller who's going to have a long-term relationship with him. Those two get so much on the same page, almost like that Breeze, Sean Payton relationship you hear about, where they're calling the plays for each other. They're on such a same page. They know everything in and out. They have a sort of cerebral connection there that is unique. And you could think Tom Brady and Josh McDaniels forever there, or Peyton. Well, Peyton was more his own OC, but Tom Moore was connected to him. But yeah, I think that what he has to do is get so comfortable with what the scheme is, what they want him to do, that he plays from out in front of teams from his mind. Like he has to know decisions to be made before they're made. And that's what guys like Drew, guys who found long-term success like Phillip Rivers, who are not gifted movers, they deciphered defenses almost before the snap, right? Like they had an idea of, hey, the safety's rotating here pre-snap. They're going to bring pressure 2 off my right. What's my answer? Throw it to it, beat it. That West Coast quick throw stuff. And that's a lot of what they do in the passing game when they're not doing wide zone stuff, is it's a West Coast principled offense. He will get, if he wants to be this fantastic version, and Tom Brady's another guy like that, and Ben Roethlisberger, even though Ben had more extension ability because of his body size, he has to be able to beat people with his mind, get out in front of where to go with the football, burn teams based on coverage mistakes, those sorts of things. And I think that's how he takes off. So I would love to see more of that this year, where I break down tape and I can see what the defense is trying to do. And I can see Baker actively burning what the defense is trying to do, right? Like that is what you want to see from him. So he started to show pocket comfort by the end of the year. I thought he made great strides in how he handled the pocket, how he handled a lot of different things, really. I mean, his ability to not bail out anymore, all of that stuff started to show. I thought the mechanics of the right foot forward approach had worked out for him. I'm not really too concerned about mechanic stuff, but I do want to see him get a little better at decision-making, process thinking. And if he carries the guy that was the quarterback from week 7 on and ties it into 17 consecutive games, I mean, you're really looking at a guy that could be a top 8 quarterback, and it's 17 games this year. So the realistic goal of throwing for 4,200 yards or so and 35 touchdowns, keeping the interceptions around 10, then you're going to start having those conversations about him being one of the better quarterbacks in the league. At least we think. I've talked about the the system he's in, the quarterback will never get the credit they deserve. I mean, it's just a weird thing about West Coast wide zone teams. They love to give credit to everybody but the quarterback, but all he can do is play consistently good football and put his team in the best place to win. And if you win enough games and you put up enough stats, and people will start giving you respect. At least that's the hope.
Yeah, that was kind of like my next question, really. Obviously, Nick Chubb is phenomenal. This O-line is great. Why isn't Baker getting the credit he deserves? And what's the whole thing about a system quarterback? That just doesn't make any sense to me, calling someone like a system guy.
Yeah, I think what I've noticed, it's a moving target, man. What I've noticed is that
the goalposts are always moving for
Yeah,
me.
it's always moving all the time.
Yeah, I kind of equated it to selling your quarterback soul on Twitter the other day. You never will get the respect you probably deserve. You can extend your career and play good football, like even take yourself up another couple levels, but you'll never quite get the respect you deserve because people want to blame it on someone else. So what happens is teams are trying to keep quarterbacks out of situations where they struggle. And that's the biggest goal is, keeping, and it's really keeping teams out of 3rd and 8. The guys who get the most respect are the guys who almost operate out of gun, operate out of empty looks, and really who does that a lot. Josh Allen, right, does it a ton. Brady does it a ton. There's no doubt that people give Lamar a lot of respect because he does some of those things occasionally. But there's this idea that if you get under center and you have these good running backs, and even if they put the offense on your shoulders in times, like I thought they did with Baker, then you're just not going to get the respect that you deserve because they want to give it to other people. I don't know where this is going. The discussion around quarterback play and who deserves credit and who doesn't deserve credit is really weird, but they want you to be the driving force. And if you're not the driving force leading a team, meaning you have 2 talented running backs and you have this really nice offensive line, even if you're the one helping out that offensive line by quickly getting rid of the football, they're never going to give you credit. So I won't take offense to it. I mean, I'm not going to, I've had many times where I've wanted to jump in and dive in and yell at somebody who says something stupid, but the perception is the perception and it's not going to change. They're going to continue to just give Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt credit, who are good football players, obviously great football players, unless Baker, unless they put him in situations where he has to go out and win. So just win. Like if you just win, people still call Tom Brady a system quarterback. I don't even know. It's just dumb buzzword stuff, man. That's all it is. Like it's just dumb buzzword stuff. Now, Baker's got to continue to make plays when nothing's there, prove that he can throw people open, right? Those difficult throws that aren't laid out and easy for him to do. And I continue to say he's in his 4th year in the NFL. Like, just give it time. We all want to make these decisions about the value of quarterbacks right now. And I hate that about modern football almost more than anything, because it's just not a sport that you can make quick decisions, and they're forcing the contract situations that the NFL has put into quarterbacks, decisions for franchises to make on quarterbacks, is making them make decisions quickly about them. And I just think that we need to be so much more patient than we're being with them, because it's leading to bad results across the league, which bums me out a lot. So I think Baker just needs to stay the course, man. Eventually, you're going to have to let go of Nick and Kareem. Eventually, you're going to have to let go of Odell, and then you're going to ask Baker, making $35 million a year, hey, carry us. It's the same thing that people want to forget this about the Steelers. Ben Roethlisberger's first 3 or 4 years, he was carried by a fantastic defense and some nice skill position players until they gave him a contract in his 5th year. And then they said, hey, you got to carry us. And he did. They were patient with him. Drew Brees got time to figure things out at his position, right? He got time in San Diego to figure it out for a few years before he was asked to carry an entire franchise. He didn't really do it until he got to New Orleans. Like, give it some time. Let the guy get really comfortable in the league. Let him figure out the things he can do, the things he can't do, what he's comfortable with, what offensive system he fits best in, and then go from there. So we just want to rush. And it's the same with Tom Brady early in his career. Those defenses won Super Bowls. It's not really hard to go figure out that those defenses were elite, and Tom just kind of did enough to get by. So be patient, stay the course, and there's no need to hey, man, we can't give him money, so we got to reset the whole quarterback room. Let it play out. Look at again, go back and look at Peyton, go back and look at Phillip Rivers, back and look at Drew, go back and look at Tom, the guys who we see having long-term success. there were some up and down years, right? There were some years that maybe in the first 7 years weren't as good as either the team or the players wanted them to be. So be patient. I think he's got a long NFL future in front of him. I think he can do a lot of great things for Cleveland. He can be, hopefully, that's the challenge, is what they have to figure out. Do they think he can carry them, right? Do they think that when those primetime skill position players, they can't afford them all, can he carry them? And I think that we'll learn a lot about that this year.
All right, nice. I only have one more thing. I know Matt has a couple more things, but so you're talking about patience and consistency. We have this great coach in Kevin Stefanski. What does he need to improve on the most? Because no one's really talked about that at all. What type of like play calling, defensive schemes, what do you think he needs to improve on?
Throwing a little bit more early downs, being less predictable, putting his best guys out there, which sometimes mean not throwing 3 tight ends out there as often as they did. I think he can get better in that regard. The process for reviewing plays and making decisions is very great. So they don't really need to improve that. They just need to stay consistent. There were not many times I watched the games last year and thought, I can't believe he's challenging that, or I can't believe he's going for this here or not going for it. They have great process there. But what they can do is, like I said earlier, and again, a lot of the data about their early down passing was tied to a team that didn't get a preseason, didn't get a full training camp the way they were supposed to. It was a new offensive system. So of course you're going to run these 2 elite running backs you're going to run them a lot. I think that stuff will balance out. I have no fear about that. But yeah, just uptick early down throwing, keep integrating the play action you're doing. And, I don't really have much else to complain about him with. I think he helps out the defense more than people understand. And he does a nice job there. He's a great motivator, great leader. He's able to get these guys to be able to handle drastic change in a short amount of time. So, keep doing you, man. Keep being you. Keep being the coach that you are. And again, like I'm talking about Baker needing consistency, you would like Kevin to keep showing that level of consistency and decision-making, taking advantage of weaknesses of defenses. It's a rare thing, guys. I'm not worried about their coach. I think he's the type of guy who will have self-reflection after a season and get better at what he thinks he struggled with and talk to people he respects about, how did I handle this situation? What can I improve? That stuff. He will do that. He's that good at who he is as a person, in terms of like understanding there's no ego with him. So he will do all the right things to make sure that he improves. But there are little minor things on the offensive side of the football you would like to see them have a little uptick with, which I've referenced here. But overall, not much at all, man.
All right. I kind of agree with that. Just didn't know if there was anything that you saw, like you have a much more knowledge about this Browns team than I could ever dream to. So just thought I'd fire that.
Yeah, no, it was a good question.
Right. I do have one like I do wonder. I guess obviously with Stefanski, like everybody always wonders, like, is there a ability to have consistency when the contract comes up and when all these players are going to be gone? Do you think long term AB will be able to subsidize the roster good enough to keep the success going? Because everybody's so worried about the window, and honestly, the window could be 2 years and it could be 5 years. It all depends to me on how Andrew Berry is able to keep the roster at a good enough level, I would think. Do you agree on that?
Yeah, they inherited some players, right? They inherited a really good situation. Did Andrew? Baker was already here, Nick's here, Kareem was here. They've done well adjusting course and improving the offensive line and improving the tight end room. They've done things on their own, but they inherited the playmakers, right? Odell was already here. You can argue whether Odell needed to be here, but just it's in terms of inheriting the top line players, they inherited a lot of it. And they've done a great job taking where I thought John Dorsey struggled, and that was the middle of the roster to the bottom of the roster, and taking it to a whole new level. They've done a nice job with that, but you're right. There's going to be a challenge when you can't pay everybody, because you can't, right? You can't pay this offensive line the way it's being paid forever. You can't pay 2 wide receivers the way they're being paid. So it's going to come down to drafting. The way you fix your roster holes is it's an evolution in drafting players that are difference makers for you, and then Also getting those fringe guys, the Sheldon Days, the Davion Davises, the Jamarcus Bradleys, the Kadero Hodges of the world to come in and be able to step in on cheap contracts and perform. So I'm encouraged by those things. Something that I've talked about ad nauseum here lately is how well the scouting department has handled those fringe type players, the vested veterans who are fringe roster players, Michael Dunns of the world, who can come in and be a role player on your team and not cost much money. That's one area where I've said, like, kudos to them. They've done a fantastic job with that process. And that matters. That's what keeps you in contention. The Saints aren't good every year. The Patriots had some years that weren't as good as others. The Packers have had some years where you got to look, if you look at those teams, they've reshaped themselves several times. The challenge is, how do you do that? Well, you have to draft well. You got to find guys in the draft. You can sign free agents here and there, but you don't rely on that. You got to draft well. So I have no reason right now to doubt the ability of Andrew Berry to find the fringe players like the Sheldon Days of the world, find those types of guys, Malik McDowell's, but also I think they've done a pretty good job drafting so far. So I think that'll be something that they continue to be decent enough too. So, we can get out in front of ourselves and plant fears and all that stuff. I know we want the Browns to be as good as they can be for as long as they can be, right? We're like, oh my God, they're finally good. How long will this last? And I totally get that. And I think for now, I have no reason to believe that they can't identify those types of players I'm referencing, those fringe guys, and also find some UDFA guys, the AJ Greens of the world, who can help you too. So they're proving, I know it's early and the real test hasn't arrived on this. The real test will be when certain players have to walk. Maybe Wyatt Teller has to walk, or they don't replace Jack Conklin with a high paid right tackle. That'll be the test. But, yeah, for now, I feel really good about it. The scouting process, the process there that's in place, the decisions that they've made make me feel like they can handle this stuff as it comes. And it'll be just really fun, actually, to watch how they turn over this roster and how it ends up being completely different than where it is right now. They'll have Baker for the foreseeable future. Other young guys, you think Denzel and Miles will be a part of that for the long time. Nick's shelf life is sort of limited because of obvious reasons for running back scenarios. But, they've got a core of a rusher, a corner, and a quarterback. And we'll see if those guys, all three, have good years. Well, the two of them, Miles has already signed. If those two have good years, they'll lock them in for a while. And that's kind of the core. And then you're just shaping it around them. And I think Andrew Berry is a guy I feel really comfortable with shaping the roster around those guys.
All right. Well, I fully agree. I think the future looks great. So, Jake, I don't want to really hold you any longer. You've been here for about 40 minutes already. So this was just a great interview. Thanks again for coming on. You guys can check him out at the OBR film breakdown. So make sure to check that out. And thank you guys for watching. Peace out.